Yep. Okay, I've got a two-part question. One, I'd like to bring John Madigan in the discussion here. John, you were in the Senate Estimates Committee. I think you talked about Australian law. You kept coming back to that, I think, throughout that. Now, I wonder what your thoughts are on the National Integrity Tribunal that the government is proposing under the current scheme, and in particular, listening to what Kristen has said about having a rights. She had to get out of the caste system to get her rights preserved in Canada. And also what Michele's been talking about in the UK, the same sort of thing, to get it away from the caste system. So what are your thoughts on the integrity tribunal, that the national integrity system that the current government is proposing? And the second part of the question, I'd like to also bring in Rob Bennett. In the Essendon problem was the special case that with a team sport, you get collateral damage. So the supporters were significantly damaged as well as the athletes, I would suggest. And I'd like to hear some of Rob's comments on that, because I feel that in some sense the supporters had a claim on the problem. We were damaged without question. So I'd like to put that into the discussion if that's possible.
Thanks very much for the question. I find it a bit ironic that the government is now speaking about a national integrity body, because some years ago, a few years ago when I was still in the Senate, I spoke about having a National Integrity Commission, because what I saw was that there is generally in our country, we like to think that corruption's not an issue. But wherever there's money, wherever there's power, there's the threat of corruption. Now, when we spoke about this, and at the time Senator Wang was also supportive of that, from Clive Palmer's senator, and the government and the opposition were not interested in the National Integrity Commission. Now, and as I said, one of the biggest problems that I saw in my time in the Senate was there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of lip service given to the issues of integrity, transparency, accountability.
Tracey.
And,
okay, I've sent them a message via Skype.
And in fact, this is a huge deficit in our system. What concerned me was, now, just for the record and to be crystal clear, I'm not a sports fan. I wouldn't cross the road to go to a game of football, but I am a fan of justice and people getting a fair go. And as you erode the rights of one, you erode the rights of all. In this case, I put myself in those 34 people's position, and their reputations were destroyed, their livelihoods were destroyed, and I just thought, this is just so unjust. And it made me think. I can distinctly remember the first meeting I had on the issue at the Commonwealth Parliamentary Offices here in Melbourne, and this business where you can't have representation, that you're subjected to a foreign body which is not accountable to the Parliament, is not accountable to the people, is not accountable to our representatives, is a travesty of justice. And I, for the life of me, cannot understand why members of Parliament, both in the House of Representatives and the Senate, could abdicate their responsibility to Australian citizens, no matter who you are, where you're from, what you do, to protect your legal rights to have a fair trial. And this sets very dangerous precedents for all Australians. Now, some people say this subject's been flogged to death, but it is a live issue. It's undermining each and every person in this room and out in the streets' ability to get a fair trial. And governments, I don't care who they are, of whatever persuasion, have a duty to protect each and every Australian's right to a fair trial under Australian law. Now, you know, those of you who would have seen Mr McDevitt questioned, he repeatedly failed to answer the question put to him. You know, and I put it to him, he went verdict shopping, and I believe he did go verdict shopping because he couldn't get a conviction under what would be a normal burden of proof. You know, the AFL appointed those two eminent retired judges and that eminent barrister to that tribunal. And when the tribunal didn't deliver the verdict that they thought was appropriate, they then outsourced it. An absolute bloody disgrace.